Hey guys, so if you are, searching for a small business to buy or you're brokering small businesses or selling your small business, whatever it might be, the thing is there's a lot of reasons why deals just don't close, okay? And today I want to, share a little bit of the story behind Buy Then Build and identify what some of those things are and some of the things that we can do in order to keep us from doing that and ways to succeed especially as a first-time buyer. My name is Walker Deibel. I am the Wall Street Journal bestselling author of Buy Then Build, creator of the Acquisition Lab. I bought 10 companies outright and all the rest of it. So, here's the thing. I recently gave a talk to the California Association of Business Brokers, and something happened to me that's never happened before. In the middle of my talk, three different times, the audience like just burst into applause, and the third time, I got a standing ovation. Okay, and this has never happened to me. But the thing was even during that standing ovation, I wasn't done. Like my presentation wasn't over, and it was a very impactful talk to a certain group of people. I'm not going to give the whole talk here today, but I have some slides. I'm just going to break out a little part that I think really resonated with the audience, which was mainly built up of business brokers, right? But I mean, the thing is this all starts with the fact that I started looking for my first business to acquire in 2004, and I bought my first business in 2006. I ran that one as CEO for 7 years. It was 8 million in revenue, just under 50 employees. Sold in 2013 to an acquisition target. And then between 2013 and 2016, I bought, I think, six companies in that range, and then bought another two between, 2016 and 2023. So, 10 companies I've acquired outright. Okay. But the thing is in the middle of that time, okay, like in between 2013 and 2016 specifically, okay, I had this, I was in a bunch of entrepreneur networks. And I hung out with entrepreneurs. It's what we did. I used to do startups and all the rest of it. In fact, I still do. And but anyway, the point is I felt very isolated, misunderstood, and frankly alone. Right? Entrepreneurship during the first 20 years of this millennium was not buying small businesses at all. It was, Silicon Valley, VC backed, going public, leaving the walled palace and starting from scratch and all the things that we know and love as entrepreneurs, right? Just building value out of thin air. And I started buying companies, and I can't explain how unusual this was. And my MBA professors tried to talk me out of it, saying it was a bad idea, right? But the point was I was really alone, and I remember I was at a party and I was introduced, but from one entrepreneur to another, as this is Walker, he buys and sells companies, and I was like, listen, that's great, like that is baller. I love the intro, but. The truth is I'm just like you, and these entrepreneurs don't understand what I'm doing, right? And so I decided, look, I'm going to go out and I'm going to try to write the good to great of what it is that I'm doing, right? And by doing that, I realized that this is my favorite book, business book, whatever. Jim Collins' Walks on Water. It's this wonderful book, looking at the empirical evidence of what makes companies great, right? And good is the enemy of great, and like what are the things that we can think about and implement to get going. So Jim has to like 24 PhDs on staff. So the first thing I realized was that I was not going to be able to build a good to great, right? And we'll get to that in a minute. But the point is I went out and just started conducting interviews, right? And when I talked to people who had bought businesses, eventually I'd say like, well, what was it that you were looking for when you were ultimately, searching for that business, right? And everyone always said sort of the same a version of the same thing. Like I was just looking for what everyone else is looking for, right? I was looking for and then they would answer something that was absolutely, totally, and completely different. Okay. And there was a lot of people that had just sort of like anecdotal experiences, right? And I realized that this was like a very, very fragmented and very, very opaque, space with a lot of one-off things that didn't necessarily need best practices at all, like we would have gotten in a good to great. And instead, what we needed was frameworks around how to look at the things we're looking at and how to figure out where value can be extracted, not best practices in terms of how to do it, right? And so ultimately, I wanted to write a book that was partially on theoretical frameworks, but also just in my experience okay, of, being a small business owner and being in these small deals and how it is. So ultimately I write this book. It takes me 7 drafts, right, from scratch. And then my editor calls and he says, Walker, listen, I'm confused. Are you trying to sell this idea? And I was like, well, there's a lot going on. It's hard work. It's risk. I just want people to go in eyes wide open. He said, no, we're going to pull all this stuff out. You need to sell this idea, right? And so ultimately, once the book was done, I delayed the launch. Okay. I delayed the launch and I've delayed it for 9 or 10 months. Okay. And the reason why is because I got uncomfortable that if I write, buy, then build and put it out there in the world, someone's going to go out and buy an existing company. And that is crazy. Right. So, and I don't want responsibility for that. This is hard work. So ultimately, what happened was I realized that, this is a capital asset class, just like any other. It's like real estate. It's like the stock market. It's like entrepreneurship. It's like anything, private equity. And it's not any more irresponsible of me as an author to write a book about buying existing companies than it is about going out and buying a rental property, or worse, leaving your well-paying job and going out and starting a company from scratch. All these things have risks and they're all work. Okay. And so ultimately I said to myself, okay, look, I'm going to go to market because it's okay, but I'm going to target successful entrepreneurs as my audience, right? So when I was writing the book, okay, ultimately I asked the question, what are the characteristics that make a successful entrepreneur? And I came up with some things. But after interviewing, executive, PhDs that work with executives and whatnot, ultimately, all of the empirical evidence has this as the definition, right? It's an intelligent, driven individual. Okay, now check it out. Intelligent, we can't actually separate IQ from results. All the evidence suggests that it's correlated, right? So it's an intelligent, driven individual committed to a good opportunity, not a great opportunity, right? So it's someone who is smart, willing to put in the work and just getting after it, just saying, hey, I have an opportunity. This is my shot. I'm going to do it, right? And so this is what ultimately it is. And so everyone knows, kind of like what the building blocks of a marketing funnel are, right? Like it's sort of like aware, interest, desire, action, right? Like, buying the product, whatever. So I decided early on that my target audience, right, was going to be competent entrepreneurs or people that could be competent entrepreneurs, because what that means is that my readers then would be competent business buyers, right? Which is, the bulk of what's made up success thus far. But there's this little problem. This little problem is that when Buy Then Build was launched, it ignited this spark, okay, that basically invited all of these, social media influencers, of which I am not one. I was not one. I kind of did a lot of LinkedIn work on Buy Then Build at the beginning, but Buy Then Build really took off with people on social media, okay? And it went from sort of like competent people as the target audience to everyone should quit their job and go out and buy a business, right? Look, that's wrong. I do think that, this is a great opportunity for competent people who can run a business. But the point is not, I had a new marketing team at one point run an ad that said even janitors can like buy a business. No, like, I had to correct all that right away. This is not who, my target audience is. So ultimately, if you back up and just kind of ask yourself, like, why do deals not close? Okay. There's really 3 reasons, right? Bad deals, bad brokers, and bad buyers. All right. And the bad deals, okay, really just stems in the fact that like the whole entire market, okay, the sub $25 million market is completely unregulated, right? There's no Securities and Exchange Commission. Some states require, they're like, well, we should have these people have something. So they make them get like a real estate license, okay? So it's unregulated. A lot of, small business owners don't have a lot of, documentation. So there's a lot of things that aren't figured out until later. And ultimately, brokers don't necessarily do a good job at scale. In fact, most brokers, if are terrible, frankly, like, using the 80-20 rule, probably 80% of brokers out there is terrible. And the broker model suggests that I need to just list a bunch of businesses and then therefore I'll sell some percentage of them, right? But when I started to look at, Axial came out with this report, and I started to look at, how are brokers spending their time, right? I found this really interesting. like not only do brokers really have no sort of, there's no licensing, there's no regulations, there's no, best practices even out there in brokering. There's good firms and not good firms. It's kind of a west experience. But when I looked at how they were sort of spending their time, this is the one that I found kind of interesting. Because when I actually am working on a deal, I will spend an inordinate amount of time actually building, in this case, the confidential information memorandum, or, the business summary or the package that's going out to the potential buyers out there in the field, right? And so I think that by spending extra time getting the business ready to go, what happens is you get all the fair weather, buyers to take interest in it, and that's actually what makes a listing great. But hold on, the audience for this video is not business brokers, business buyers, and I want to stop right here and just talk for a second. The fact that business brokers don't spend a lot of time packaging the business actually creates tremendous opportunity. Okay. And the better brokers get, the worse it's going to be for you. And the reason why is because when you have a really poorly assembled business summary, all the fair weather buyers don't look at it. They don't dig in. They pass on it too quickly. It doesn't pass muster. It's not attractive to the hot take. It's not attractive because they don't make it attractive. There's missing data, all the rest of it. And when you start to ask to get the data, and if it's a struggle to get it, that's in a way even better, because now you know that fewer and fewer people are able to get access to that information. And we've had business buyers in the lab find great diamonds in the rough just because, it's been at market too long, because, the broker just sort of did a poor job, putting the package together, and maybe it had, for a good reason, a declining revenue trend. I mean, these aren't the things that you want to, drool over, right? But the thing is once you get into a deal and get inside a business, you can often find out what's going on, right? So then I sort of turned to the audience in this instance, and they're all business brokers, and this was the largest, business broker conference they had had in their history. And I sort of said, like, look, what makes a bad buyer? And I just sort of got them talking, and they yelled out stuff, and the pitchforks came out, and people were lighting torches, and I just kind of got the audience all fired up, which was really fun. But then I sort of shared, what we kind of came up with, right? Which is like, guys, like, this, all right, like, I'm unfamiliar with the terms. I take a lot of time of the brokers. I decide if I'm going to buy the business after, I put an LOI. I'm learning as I'm going. Sometimes they ghost. I had a buyer who signed, he was hell-bent on an extended exclusivity period, and I finally caved. And then he disappeared for 10 days. He went on a Disney cruise, came back and said he didn't buy the internet package. Did that deal close? Of course not. We lost all the momentum right out of the gate. This guy would rather go on a Disney cruise than close this business, right? And they can't really prioritize, they can't prioritize the different things that they're learning. And, ultimately they're making offers that are not financeable. So they're not doing their homework, right? Ahead of time. And, some of their habits, right? They interrogate the seller. They'll renegotiate inappropriately afterwards. They want to meet employees prior to, closing the deal. They ask for a ton of info and a lot of details before going under LOI. They extend these unfinancial offers we've touched on. And so ultimately, these are the things that we try to, shoulder and protect against in the lab when we work with buyers at scale. And the biggest thing, and this just made everyone freak out, the biggest thing is they don't understand this. They're looking for no money down, no money out of pocket, or they're saying they're in a search fund, or they're a traditional search fund, and maybe they know what that is, maybe they don't, and ultimately they don't understand how that market actually works because of all the bad information coming to them from, did I mention, social media? Okay. It's the bane of my existence as someone that's actually in the space and inside deals and doing it, right? At the same time, I kind of like it because I know how to navigate it, and there's just a lot of noise out there. So ultimately, 90% of people who start looking for a business never actually buy one. Okay. Keep that in mind. 90% never buy one. You always feel like, hey, there's all these people, you might feel like, there's so much competition as a buyer. This is crazy. There's not enough buyers for the businesses that need a transfer. Okay. I've made another video about that. We're not going to go into that here, but keep that in mind. And sometimes there's a little bit of a Hollywood effect, right? And what I mean by that is, in Hollywood, the business strategy, is you move to Hollywood, and the first thing you do is wait 10 years for most people to leave. And it takes about 10 years for like the first person to leave and the 80th person to leave, right? So, to get 80% of the market out of the market is you just have to wait 10 years. And then in year 11, it gets started. That's the Hollywood business model. But the point is, look at all of the things that these people need, okay? And that's ultimately why, we built the acquisition lab and are helping buyers, accomplish all these things. And our mission, okay, at Acquisition Lab is to create the largest vetted community of educated and prepared financial buyers stacked with cash in the country. And we've done that, okay? Basically, we've been around for what, 4 or 5 years now. We've got 800 members, a little over 800 members. We have 200 closed transactions, $400 million in transactional value. We have a 35% close rate. We don't start tracking until after 8 months because, the odds that someone's going to buy a business in the first 8 months is slim. But ultimately what I did was I went through and just said, look, I mean, here's the components, guys. Like we teach buyers the way that you would teach buyers. Okay. We're not teaching them, how to buy, businesses with no money down, how to go out and waste everybody's time, how to go out and do something with no skin in the game, how to take advantage of the management team, how to, lead with seller financing options and things that, it's basically you're banking on, something that happens, but it's also like a standard deviation or two standard deviations out of normal. Okay. And so we teach buyers how to actually effing do this. All right. We do it with four things. Yes, we have world-class education. That's where we anchored. I taught this at an MBA program, hired a curriculum designer, worked with her and two other people and myself, created all the curriculum. We have 14 advisors on staff. We have a private Slack channel with two Slack specific advisors. But the ultimately the thing is like it's a truly elevated group, right? And so not only do you get all the tools and the language and the spreadsheets and the stress test models and all the rest of it, but ultimately by vetting first, okay, we have I think it's 70 to 75% of applicants to the lab are not extended an invitation to enroll. Don't hold that against me. And the thing is we don't have a really high bar, guys. Okay. We just look for, are you competent? Can you actually do this? Right. Or, can we help you achieve your goal? Right. And so that's what we really look for. And, but just by doing that, okay, we turn away 70 to 75% of revenue of people that want to give us money. We say, no, we can't help you. Okay. And by doing that, it's really elevated the group and the conversations that we have. Okay. And so, yeah, so it's world-class education, tools, resources, vetted community, supplier, all that stuff. And so listen, if you want to buy a business in the next, whatever, 1 to 24 months, check out Acquisition Lab. We are the elite provider in the space. Thanks so much.